This is a drone, and this is the motor synth, a very fancy and unique boutique synthesizer. These two devices have exactly one thing in common. They both use the same kind of electric motor. The drone, of course, uses the motors to power its propellers. As for the motor synth, well, we'll just have to see. Game Changer Audio was nice enough to send over this unique instrument, and today we're going to put it through its paces. Oh wow, that is beautiful. I'm very excited to try this out. Oh look, it even has a window in the back so you can see the mechanism. Okay, let's plug this in and give it a spin. Okay, I just turned it on. Oh, this is wild. Look at those motors spinning. So I guess if I press a key, yep, I could hear the speed of the motor changing. Unlike the vast majority of synthesizers, which produce their sound using electronic circuits, motor synth generates its sound using motors. Specifically, high-precision drone motors. When it needs to play a high note, it spins the motor faster, and when it needs to play a low note, it slows it down. By the way, you may have noticed that there's a sort of high-pitched whine behind my voice. That's the mechanical noise of the motors spinning. In other words, that's what I'm hearing in the room. Let me turn down the room mics. Much better. So far I've discovered that these buttons trigger notes. Let's try to change the octave. Nice. Looking at this interface, I'm seeing a lot of things that are very familiar to me from other kinds of synthesizers. For example, there's a filter here. And there are tools for modulating the different parameters. Okay, this thing is too cool. As somebody who tinkers with electronics, I can't imagine how much time they must have spent perfecting this instrument. Like, how did they get the motors to spin at exactly the right speed to be able to reliably reproduce a pitch? I guess that's why they had to use drone motors, but still, it seems like a huge undertaking. According to this piece of paper it came with, each motor has a disc attached to it. The underside of the disc has special patterns on it. As the disc spins, an optical sensor reads the patterns, and that process produces a waveform. As you can see here, there are 3 different waveform types, and consequently there are 3 different tracks on the disc. Now, a while back, you may remember that I made a video about very similar experiments I was doing with electric motors. Basically, I attached a bunch of wire shapes to an electric motor and then used a guitar pickup to record the resulting signal. I was pretty happy with the results. So what I was doing was not optical at all, but as it happens, my electromagnetic approach is something the motor synth can also do. Check it out. In addition to the 3 main waveform types, there's also this thing that says M. Oh, that sounds so cool. But yeah, basically that works exactly like the experiments I was doing. Each motor has a series of pickups, and those are used to record the oscillation of the motor. I'm noticing this thing also has a sequencer. Let me try to make a quick sequence. Okay. Oh, that's really cool. In addition to the motors, there's also a digital oscillator. I'm going to turn it up. Now that this is running, I'm free to play with the settings without having to also trigger notes. So far, what strikes me about this is how fleshed out it is as a product. Like, sure, it has a sequencer, but what if you wanted to chain patterns together? Well, you can do that. What about an arpeggiator? It has that. Has 3 different LFOs, separate envelope for each voice, a vocoder. It just goes much deeper than I expected. Of course, there are caveats. The motors do make a lot of noise in the room. For example, this is what the current sequence sounds like in the room. And then there's the cost. Bold ideas like this require significant R&D, and that is, of course, reflected in this machine's $3,000 price tag. That being said, it's a beautiful and very deep instrument. So far, I've just been messing with the panel controls, but the motor synth also comes with a bunch of presets. These are organized into banks. Some of them are really beautiful. Also, a lot of really interesting and grimy sounds. Ooh, let's move on to the next one. Oh, I like this. I'm going to set up Ableton Live and maybe we can try to make a piece of music out of this. Let's try to make a little chord progression. Of course, each of these buttons has been pre-assigned to a note. I can change them, but I don't want to. I'm just going to see what chords I can make out of the notes I've been given. Now that we've got a chord progression recorded, let's try to add another voice on top of it. I love how metallic it sounds. Let's try another lead voice. It's funny, when you look out on YouTube and Instagram, you see a ton of people doing interesting audio experiments. A synthesizer you can bow like a violin, robotic xylophone, someone making music with disk drives. I love these kinds of DIY experiments, but in most cases, it wouldn't make sense to turn them into full-fledged products. So it's very exciting to see an oddball idea like making music with motors not only turned into a real product, but one that's actually thought out very carefully. I guess what I'm trying to say is, by rights, this thing shouldn't exist, but I'm really glad that it does. If you enjoyed this video, and you are not subscribed to this channel, now is the time. If you ding that bell, you'll be notified when I make more of these videos. Also, I've taken some of my favorite homemade patches from the motor synth, and I've turned them into a sample library. That is now available to patrons. Speaking of which, the Patreon costs just $5, and every month I upload a brand new sample library just for patrons. A sample library you can download from right within the Decent Sampler plugin. How cool is that? Okay, I think that's it. See you soon.